a thread through the first two talks that were hosted in Surrey and were hosted in the University of Primorska, and then finally here in Surrey. We have four fantastic speakers in the lineup today. We have Dr. Oksana Shyber from Kyiv National University of Culture and Arts. We have Professor Brent McKenzie from the University of Guelph in Canada. We have Professor Demet Genceli from, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Yeditepe, University in Turkey, and we have Zhenni from the University of Surrey here. Very different topics. Each speaker has 15 minutes. There will be an opportunity for some short questions on clarification on particular points, and then we're going to hold things over for a wider general discussion at the end of the four presentations. So we're going to go in the same order as we advertised, with Dr. Oksana, followed by Professor Brent, and then Associate Professor Demet Genceli, and then ending up with Zhenni Wu. So Oksana, would you like to share and take it away? And just again, final reminder, for if you can mute, that would be great if you're not speaking. Help follow us on the chat. And Oksana, do you want to share?
Yeah, I try to share. Thank you, Jonathan. Is everything okay? Can you see my presentation?
It's coming up. Yeah, we can see it fine now. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, just one more time. Yeah, okay, everything's great. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Oksana Shyber, and I'm Associate Professor in the Event Management Department at Kyiv National University of Culture and Arts. So I'm here today to showcase some Ukraine's most remarkable events and the innovative decisions made by event managers. Amidst crisis, I will touch on how we handle challenges without delving into the wartime surreal tactics, as I sincerely hope that such circumstances never darken your life. Instead, I will highlight the resourcefulness of our people, especially event managers, whose skills benefit our communities in a diverse ways. So, when the war began, the Ukrainian event industry faced a major challenge. Could it even continue to exist? Despite the negative impacts on the event space, such as losing event managers to the armed forces of Ukraine, some event managers, of course, going abroad, and it was disrupted supply chains. Even businesses participants remain brave in the face of these challenges and threats. So they continue to support the state economy, seeking some creative decisions that fit today's reality. As a result, representatives of the event industry, as part of cultural front, they formed like a cultural front and becoming some defenders and drivers of the restoration of Ukrainian cultural identity. So some creators implemented volunteer initiatives, raising millions in donations. They supported army of Ukraine and also civilian population in the deoccupied territory. So, and my first example about innovative decision, and it's really happened after February 24, 2022. Some very famous leading event agency in Ukraine took place and started providing this concert for the armed forces of Ukraine, right on the front lines. This concert was provided to uplift the morale of our soldiers. So, how you can see on these pictures, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, suggested this idea and it began after 10 days after the invasion started. These concerts were held in various locations, including bomb shelters, parks, fields, hospitals, military units, totaling more than 400 performances. And I have just some simple questions to you. What do you think? What's the key aspects of managing such the events? If somebody would like to give in your ideas, what's the key aspects to managing this concert for armed forces, for soldiers? Any ideas?
If you raise your hand, I will unmute you.
No, the firstly, of course, it's confidentiality and security, the crucial. The closer the concert is to the front line, the less information is disclosed about it. Suitable location was determined by Minister of Defense. So, and organizers and performers are escorted to the venue from a designated meeting point. For instance, during a concert at the factory of the Donetsk region, event managers by Event Agency 7, who is the started provided this concert, had to move very carefully in the darkness to avoid detection by enemy drones. Next aspects, of course, the event scenario or agenda. While the basic structure remains similar, introduction to the family, video messages from families, personal stories, and the concert itself, of course, contingency plans, plan B, plan C, are in place based on the dominant situation in the region. Also, financial causes is a significant challenge as these concerns on the front lines. They was initiated by the event agency and their partners. Singers and suppliers offer the main services voluntarily, covering their own expenses, including accommodation in nearby cities. And of course, essentially, event managers and performers risk their lives during this concert, but they find relief in turning over to soldiers that they are our hero now. Singers often remain unaware of the exact concert location and are prohibited from posting about their position and social media for several days. So it was the first example, and more than 400 performances were held from the beginning of the war. It's absolutely was a new initiative decision that happened after war began started. My another example, and I actually have some questions to you. Maybe you know where the world's deepest metro station is. Any ideas? The world's deepest metro station is. So you not be surprised, or maybe you will be surprised, but the Ukrainian Arsenalna metro station is recognized as the deepest in the world, nestled an astonishing 105.5 meters underground. So imagine it's like standing atop a skyscraper with 35 floors beneath your feet. So Ukrainian underground stations serve more than rail users. They double as a bomb shelters. Unfortunately, this became a reality after February 24 and 2022 and remains a necessity. Next example, is subway as a central hub and central shelter and hub for various events. Since the beginning of the war, the Kyiv subway has become a heaven for thousands of residents, with approximately 20,000 seeking shelter there daily. Some staying overnight, while others share some stories connected with fellow seekers and safety for themselves and their families. From the outset of the war, the subway, the metro station, became a central location for various events, including press conferences by President Volodymyr Zelensky and speeches by billionaire Richard Branson. Uh, but the very first concert, a historic event, took place on an improvising stage in the Kyiv metro station, like I mentioned, and feature the Irish group U2 with lead singer Bono. Bono expressed, there is no place in the whole world where we would like to be today more than in the great city of Kyiv. The group was invited by President Volodymyr Zelensky with his Quartal 95 team, they playing a crucial role for organizing this event. Held at the central metro station Maidan Nezalezhnosti, the concert became the focal point of events for several months, mainly because of its safety from missiles, from bombs and explosions. These performances, what I would like to say, highlight, these performances were powerful demonstrations of solidarity with Ukraine to the entire world. Following suit, Angelina Jolie and Richard Branson visited Ukraine. Furthermore, Ukrainian music icons such as Jamala, the winner of Eurovision Song Contest 2016, and Daha Braha and band Go Away, invited to the perform to some prestigious festival, Glastonbury Festival in England. Interestingly, the leaders of the bands Go Away and Daha Braha are former students of our university, Kyiv National University of Culture and Art. So, another example, one more example about one more what I would like to add in this concert featuring the country's most celebrated artists raised significant funds in support the army for several months. Soldiers and families were invited also for this concert, as Ukrainian music holds great importance for us, serving as a form of therapy that fuels our resilience and sustains our fight for freedom. So next example, let's talk about something groundbreaking. So it's project we are now, but some very famous, successful company, Edwin Ukraine. This project is like a virtual reality trainer that transforming rehabilitation for soldiers and civilians with limb loss and mobility issues. During the war, Edwin Ukraine, one of the most successful company which hosted virtual concert during lockdown, redirected their resources to help soldiers. This project we are now addresses phantom pain, improves motor skills, and enhances cognitive functions. Additionally, this tech-heavy team worked with National Museum at Liverpool to create some interactive steps for Eurovision 2023. Each represented a winning Eurovision audio track, adding excitement to the event. So how you can see, our event managers, some Ukrainian company and specialists are truly modern tech experts. So
3 minutes, Oksana.
and for today, probably just the last example. What I would like also share with you, the reach of Konoto, they play in Ukraine that is resilient despite bombings. So this, if you can see on a picture, some queue, the lines for the play stretch down the block with people waiting up to the 7 hours to buy tickets at the Ivan Franko Theatre in downtown Kyiv. The video of the show have attracted millions of views online. Now in Ukraine, we just can see there's absolutely a lot of attraction for the Ukrainian classic performances, Ukrainian classic theater, and how some headline reads, rockets and bombs are flying at them and they are standing in line for Ukrainian classic performances. And what is important also, some note, that the director of this amazing performances, amazing show, the Ivan Uritsky, who is graduate, who is a former students of our university. So, and in a conclusion, I would like to highlight how the country's top event managers have adapted the activities, demonstrating the importance of being of service to those in need during challenges time. Some have launched brands specializing in producing bulletproof vests for both military and civilians. Others have established charitable organizations aimed at assisting various causes, such as helping people with special needs, supporting vulnerable people groups. And probably the last things I would like to say, have to say, so I'm incredibly proud of our people, especially event managers, event organizers, and their helpers. And all examples that I'm sharing with you today are based on the real life situations involving event managers and agencies, their stakeholders and partners of our university. And of course, I'm really very proud for this opportunity to share this information with you. Thank you for listening me carefully. If you have any questions, I will be happy to give you my answer. Thank you. Probably I can close my presentation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Oksana. That was a very powerful presentation on the adaptation and extension of the events industry, moving away from the leisure industry into the defense, and from leisure into leisure economies into necessity and survival. Well, we have a few minutes whilst Brent sort of gets ready. If there are any sort of quick questions or clarification or points that anyone wanted to raise, the chat is empty, but from myself and James at the moment. But feel free to respond there if you want. I can read out, or if anyone wants to raise a hand to ask anything of Oksana.
We have more and more examples, just 15 minutes, and I try to give some more remarkable example. But of course, event industry in Ukraine stay alive, and just some new creative decisions, new creative concerts, a lot of fundraising events, and yeah, just
So yeah, certainly I've got some questions, but the longer ones and short ones. Well, let's move on to Brent. Brent is professor at the University of Guelph, and is speaking on Shades of Dark Tourism, the case of Bermuda, which reminds me of mopeding around the island once and sunburning my knuckles from holding onto the handlebars for too long, and I think I nearly drove over the governor of the island once. Anyway, that was a different career as a cruise lecturer. But welcome, and yeah, like Oksana, you've got 15 minutes. Thank you. We can't hear you though. I don't know if you're muted still. Is that me needing to unmute you? Let me check the lists. No, you're on mute. You're still on mute. Let me. I think you can. Can you unmute yourself, Brent? Can't hear you. James, you're my admin support, even though you're my head of department. I've got Brent here, who is muted on the profile, but when I go to the list of participants, Oksana was okay to mute and unmute herself.
Okay, I figured that out.
You're good? Yeah, that's fine. You're live. You've still got 15 minutes. I will mute myself instead.
I can't. I don't know how to get my PowerPoint to show.
Okay. Top right, there should be a share function.
Yes.
And if you hit that, it'll give you options on what screen on your computer that you want to reveal to us. So we've got your computer. We've got the Teams at the moment.
Because I already had it open.
It sometimes gives you the option to have other screens, or if you simply put the PowerPoint up as the main screen, that might give us the slides.
Any of these?
I'm getting
a blank screen.
I'm getting your web pages, and then I've got you by the side, and then I've got a background. If you go to share, if you hit share at the top right, it gives you a red sort of square around what is the shared screen, and it looks like it's the web browser one at the moment. If you unshare and try again.
I'm not seeing the share. Okay, I just moved myself to the other side. That's just lovely.
Okay. Movement is good. No worries. If you can get to.
I don't even see the share button anymore.
It might have reduced, and it might be down in the corner somewhere.
Oh, great.
I'm wondering if I can unshare for you. Hold on a second.
I'm just seeing me, and as you said, my
Let me see if I can override you. No. Zhenni, can you help me out? Because I
see the only sharing I'm seeing are your screen and then the Windows. Oh, okay. I think I found it. I thought I opened it.
It usually gives you the options. I've got yourself.
Yes.
You could just talk to us if you want. You can email me the slides.
How about
that? There we go. Perfect.
Oh, geez, I do apologize.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Anyhow,
you now have 3 minutes to speak.
Perfect. I can whip through this, no problem.
No problem. No. Take a breath. You have 15 minutes on shades of dark tourism. In the case of Bermuda, we've got visuals, we've got facials, we've got vocals, so we're good to go.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Greetings from a beautiful Candlewood Suites in Hartford, Connecticut, down in here for a conference starting tomorrow. But today I'm just going to talk about some of the dark tourism research I've been doing, specifically on Bermuda. As typical for my presentations, I tend to have a bit of an agenda, lots of pictures, and I'm looking forward to some questions at the end. Just to orient, since I didn't say at the beginning, University of Guelph is about an hour west of Toronto, to give you some sense of where I'm based out of. I'm using as a framework Stone's dark tourism spectrum from '06, basically looking at from the darkest to the lightest forms of dark tourism, concentration camp to kind of a fun house, haunted house sort of perspective. Bermuda itself is small. I believe it's 26 miles from tip to toe. Basically, the closest land mass of any side is North Carolina in the United States. And as you'll see with their logo on the right, there's a ship in there, and I'll be talking a little bit about shipwrecks. Bermuda itself, as a vacation spot, has a fairly lengthy history, particularly from the British standpoint, and actually it's a fairly large Canadian component as well. There used to be regular steamer ships down to Bermuda, also from New York and Boston. I was fortunate enough to create an advanced dark tourism course in 2020. I've been teaching just a general dark tourism course for a number of years out at my university. And I always wanted to add a field component, and Bermuda to a bunch of Canadian university students in February was certainly an attraction. But as you'll see, there were certain things that we don't generally think of about Bermuda. More historically, we view it as pink sand beaches, water, golf, etc. Mark Twain spent some time in Bermuda talking about near the end of his life. Coincidentally, yesterday I visited the Mark Twain House, which happens to be here. House and Museum is here in Hartford. Certainly, the geographic location of Bermuda has had an impact on some of its dark history, particularly related to transatlantic slave trade. There's questions and still ongoing debate on the specific role that was played by Bermuda itself, but there was no doubt that it was present, and as you can already see, we're starting to go directly against the traditional views of Bermuda as a vacation and relaxation location. Other things that have gone on, Bermuda was actually the site of the last hanging in British world possessions, if you want to say. I believe Bermuda is still a British protectorate of the UK. So certainly some dark history on that, and it also brings into the question some of the race relationships from that period as well. Mary Bassett was accused as a witch, and there's on the Governor General's ground, there's a statue of her depicting her being burned at the stake, which is obviously a very dark component as well. And also Emancipation: A Love Story. They've had a play put on about that event, which I happened to be able to attend in 2019. And then what would be considered more of a lighthearted view at some of the torture, if you will, of women, particularly in Bermuda as well. So the two things I'm going to talk specifically about are a lighter and a darker shade of dark tourism. The Bermuda Triangle, world-renowned, literally Bermuda to Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico. The picture in the bottom right is a sunken ship. That's technically the point of the Bermuda part of the triangle. There have been some strange cases, if you will, of disappearing ships and disappearing planes that have been blamed on the Bermuda Triangle. A lot of things they don't talk about is obviously there's a number of things go on in the South Atlantic, or I guess the Mid-Atlantic in general. In terms of the Bermuda Triangle itself, hurricanes, waves, sea tornadoes, etc., certainly can be the reason to explain some of these tragic events. The map in the middle just basically shows shipwrecks on the Atlantic, any major sites of shipwrecks. So I would argue up and around northwest of Europe there's way more than the Bermuda Triangle. But basically, there's a lot of shipping goes through that area. Some of the more, I guess, marketable things about the Bermuda Triangle, certainly the myths of pirates, sorcery, alien abductions, etc., have helped to grow and maintain the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. Bermuda Triangle has been depicted in numerous types of popular culture, even some that are, quote, considered science of the History Channel. I would argue it's more entertainment than history. The Bermuda Tourism Association itself wasn't always very supportive of this because they thought it wasn't giving the image that they necessarily, and when I say image, maybe the upscale image of what they viewed Bermuda to be. But certainly even some of the museums have adopted the use of the triangle, and it's also been used in terms of some official marketing campaigns about getting lost, playing on the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. Some of the things I've come across is fascinating game. I don't mean to shake my head on some of this stuff, but I always find it fascinating. But as a marketing professor, I guess I'm not surprised. If we have to place the Bermuda Triangle in terms of stone scale or spectrum, certainly there are sites of death, actual death, and there are sites of authenticity in terms of these events did occur either directly or near Bermuda. But obviously it's totally very much outweighed by the lighter side of the dark events of the Bermuda Triangle. This one I found fascinating. Some companies, even as of last year, are marketing the fact if your ship disappears on your cruise, you'll get a full refund if it disappears in the Bermuda Triangle. And then this one, they had a depiction of the Virgin cruise that the people were arguing it was going to the cursed Bermuda Triangle. So what I find fascinating about this is I'm not a big believer in the triangle. I'm a big believer of the Bermuda Triangle as a marketing opportunity, but there is some concern sometimes in terms of how this anomaly or this geographical location is being used or depicted. Moving to the darker side, shipwrecks, as I already touched upon a little bit already, a lot of shipwrecks in and around Bermuda, a lot of opportunities to dive these wrecks in terms of people on vacations. I had the opportunity to meet some people that do some of these trips out to visit these wrecks, and I always ask, like, do you talk about the people or the ships themselves or those stories? And they were pretty blunt about it. No, the people are on these trips to the wrecks basically just want to go dive. They're not really interested to any degree of the story, etc. So as I alluded to, the Bermuda flag is a depiction of the Sea Venture, which crashed near Bermuda, or what became Bermuda. It wasn't until 2001 that the Bermuda government actually had to start protecting these sites from people just diving them and acquiring things. There's no better way to put that. But this one ship, the Virginia Merchant, 169 deaths. But again, it's a site of scuba diving. I'm not making any moral judgments at this point, but sometimes these things are very interesting to understand how they're being positioned. As I said, the modern diving, your souvenir now has to be your photography or your photographs. And you could argue there's a level of authenticity because you are visiting not only the wreck of actual ships, but also the possessions or the contents of those ships. Versus in the past, there was more of a commercial aspect of doing the diving. One specific one the Mary Celestia that sank. It was a blockade runner during the American Civil War. It sank, again, fairly near to Bermuda. There's questions about what its purpose was. There is a lot of debate on Bermuda's role during the American Civil War. At some point, seemed to be they're supporting the Union, sometimes supporting the Confederates. But basically, this ship sank. And lo and behold, they've moved on to, again, a tragedy, I would argue, of the sinking of a ship to some marketing opportunities. They've created a perfume. There was perfume found on the ship along with some wine. The perfume had nothing to do with Bermuda. It was a British company, a fragrance company at the time, but they decided, okay, let's make some perfume and we'll call it the Mary Celestia. I was a little surprised by this, but some of the other research I've done on Titanic, obviously shipwrecks and tragedies don't necessarily stop you from marketing. But the product itself, you can argue, is not authentic. Again, it has no relationship to Bermuda other than it's actually made there. And some of the other things I've looked at under some Day of the Dead research is the whole thing of fragrances, and Lush creates something called death and decay. So kind of creating a product, or in this case, a fragrance, that is basically based around death, but it can be positioned in a way to have some other kind of remembrance. So positioning this case, you could split it into the shipwreck itself versus the accompanying product that kind of came out of it, with the product being very much a lighter perspective. One of the questions is, well, only one person died on this wreck, so, you know, it's, quote, not that bad. And basically the fact that, like a lot of shipwrecks, the people living in Bermuda at the time would go and salvage what they could from those sinkings. So what is the purpose of this? So the so what question always kind of comes up. With respect to dark tourism, is there something unique about dark tourism than other types of niche tourism? Because very much I'm the position that dark tourism is a very narrow subset of tourism. But my questions that I continue to look at is who should be doing this research, or who is doing this types of research? The future of supply and demand. Is it the classic, well, if we create something, we can create some demand, or is there actually demand, so we need to create some kind of supply for these things? Just as a background, the vast majority of my research in dark tourism has been very much Central and Eastern Europe, and specifically the Baltic states. But I did find it interesting that you are talking about a place that is very much positioned, I would argue, in the vast majority of the public as a vacation spot, as a relaxation spot. And the question is, should you even talk about some of these events? And if you do, how should you do so? The questions about morality and providing specific types of experience to visitors. And then kind of tying in with the last presentation, externalities. Obviously, COVID had a huge impact on tourism in general. It's really very much bounced back based on some of the statistics. It's higher than before COVID period. But a more specific case with respect to a war in Ukraine, the Baltic cruises that used to arguably one of their main sites was visiting the port of St. Petersburg, and how they've had to adapt to some of these things as well. So basically, this is my class here. We're having a great time in Bermuda. I'm happy to take any questions and things, but I am working on this book of Dark Tourism, Is the Medium Still the Message, which is tying in with Marshall McLuhan's work, basically saying, is the darkness of a site or an attraction influenced by the type of media in which you either learn about or visit the location. But as I'm also learning, books don't seem to be writing themselves, but I'm doing my best on that. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Brent. A very interesting presentation on especially the bits on diving for wrecks and whether they're attracted to the story or the shell of the wreck. And asking questions such should you talk about these destinations and how so, and tying it in with marketing and positioning. Are there any questions for clarification or quick questions for Brent from anyone? I'll check the chat again. Thank you, Oksana. Enjoyed the presentation. A number of thanks from that. Everything's working from James. I'm very interested in the book from Bethan. I'm doing work around dark tourism at the moment. I want to ask some more detailed questions later on. Okay, so we'll move on then to our third speaker, to Dr. Demet Genceli on dark tourism and dark gastronomy beyond the history. And hopefully the sharing works okay on this.
Yes, hello everyone. Good evening. I hope you see the screen right now. I tried to share it, but can you see it right now?
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, great then. So thank you so much for inviting me to this seminar. I'm Associate Professor Demet Genceli, and I'm a professor in Tourism Management Department in Yeditepe University, Istanbul, Turkey. So today I will talk about dark tourism and dark gastronomy. And Mr. McKenzie also shared the same spectrum that I will also show it to you, the darkest to the lightest of dark tourism. So let's start with the definition of dark tourism. Sometimes they call it as thanatourism, black tourism, morbid or grief tourism. And these all definitions are referring to the visiting places where some of the darkest events of human history have unfolded. And these events can be genocide, assassination, ethnic cleansing, it can be a war, it can be a disaster, and these can be happened by natural or accidental, it doesn't matter. And we see that there are some motivations of tourists to dark tourism activities. And I see that there is a powerful motivator of death and disasters on tourists. Because I see many tourists take part because they feel kind of connected, or they just want to feel a connection to the events that transpired at a particular location, and they try to learn something. They try to be the part of these disasters. And also, dark tourism, yes, it's not a happy leisure experience, and people are involving to these activities to learn something sometimes. And we see that the visitors of dark tourism, they are coming from different socio-demographic groups, and motivations can be educational purposes and trying to understand, and I said maybe trying to connect to these events and the people who suffered from these disasters. And dark tourism concept was first used in 1996, and it also involves the wars, battlefields, the cemeteries, the concentration camps, and also there can be some ghost stories and other man-made disasters. These are all under dark tourism. And we come to the touristification. Touristification is something that I read in many different research. It's the term of something that a process, the transformation of a place into a tourist space. And in touristification, we see that something is really very commercial actually. And the industry, the tourism industry, is trying to managing all our collective memory and providing a memorialized afterlife to those who died tragically, actually. And at the same time, they are trying to create a contemporary place or an attraction to consume narratives of that have been streamlined for the consumption. So sometimes I see that the consumption and the consumption thing, the commerce is very important under touristification while we are talking about dark tourism. And we see that there are not many official statistics or data that how many people participating actually to dark tourism activities every year. But we see that there are now currently 900 places in 112 countries worldwide. And why it is more visible right now, why it is more popular right now, the research say that this popularity is coming from a Netflix series called Dark Tourist, and the popular culture is fueling more visitation to some well-known sites. And after HBO miniseries Chernobyl about the 1986 power plant explosion, the travel companies bring people to the area and said they saw a visitor increase from 30% to 40%. So thanks to these series and these platforms that made a popular effect on dark tourism and dark places. So I shared the same spectrum, the darkest side and the lightest side. So the end of the darkest end, we have extreme or serious dark tourism activities. And these activities which often involve an educational element, such as learning about a nuclear disaster or a shipwreck. And also almost 1 year ago, on 18th of June 2023, I guess everyone knows that Titan, a submersible operated by American tourism company Ocean Gate, they imploded during an expedition to view the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean, and all people died in this travel. So I put this event to the darkest of dark tourism. So it was a disaster also. And also the same company says that they will also continue to these trips to see the Titanic. And there are many people, participators, they want to involve to these trips still. And also, yes, the darkest and this is the darkest and the lightest difference. We see that some places are darker than the others. For example, the death camps in Auschwitz, they are darker than, for example, U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. So the main contention, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum is associated with that, but Auschwitz is of that and possesses a crucial locational authenticity within its product design, because we see that in the darkest side, the authenticity and education orientation is very important. The perceived authentic product interpretation is important. But at the lightest side, we see that it's much more about entertainment or orientation and perceiving inauthentic product interpretation. So there is no authenticity. It's much more commercial and romantic at the lightest side. But at the darkest side, we see there is no romanticism. It's really a kind of education and conservation. And really it's about learning something or involving something. There are 5 categories of dark travel activities we see. The first one is public executions, travel to witness public enactments of that. And also I watched in one of the Netflix series this event. It was also a kind of tourism activity, and it was a part in a series in Netflix. And the second one, the travel to see the sites of individual or mass deaths after they have occurred, such as death camps in Auschwitz or the battlefields in Gallipoli in Turkey. Travel to memorials or entertainment sites. It's also another category of dark travel activity. Travel to see the evidence of symbolic representations of death in some museums. And the fifth one is traveling for reenactments or simulation of death. These are plays or festivals, and Dia de Muerto Festival in Mexico or Chuseok Festival in South Korea, which I also participated in this Chuseok Festival 6 years ago. They are thanksgiving to dead ancestors, and they are praying and they are dancing in these festivals. So this is my book. It's also related to this topic, dark gastronomy in times of tribulation. It's my first book. I wrote it last year. It was published last year. So in this book, I try to talk about the gastronomy at the beginning. It's not only about eating or drinking something. It's the combination of everything in culinary, the taste, the culture, the habits, the materials you use, the cooking techniques you use, all the culture about eating and drinking is involving in gastronomy. And also, it has existed in difficult times, in fact, in every moment and in our memories. So I started to research different and difficult periods in time. And I realized that in these difficult periods of human history, they sometimes saw gastronomy and eating and drinking as a silver lining to hold on to life and miracles. And sometimes people benefited from gastronomic elements as a medicine. And also, gastronomy is the science of art and art of eating and drinking. And I tried to put the importance of gastronomy in dark times in the history. So, tribulation times, as I said, have tasted humanity in several times. And some events have affected most of the world's population, but some events, communities living in certain regions have sometimes been very intensely affected by a single hardship. These are the topics that I try to make a research in different times of history. So I really found different outcomes while I was searching these different periods. For example, in Black Death times, vinegar and uncooked vegetables were important, and vinegar was the most popular gastronomic item in medieval Europe during this plague. And doctors also recommended a syrup from honey and vinegar to overcome the plague. And Europeans feared uncooked vegetables. They were believing that it caused diseases. In French Revolution, bread was the most significant food. Bread was the trigger and the symbol in the French Revolution. And it was decided that for the concepts of wealth and poverty to be no longer in the dictionary, but white quality flour bread made for the rich and worthless bread made from bran for the poor. And this was the starting point of French Revolution. In Ireland famine, we see seaweed is one of the most important thing, because in the midst of the potato famine, people could no longer rely on their important and staple foods, and so many turned to harvest the seaweed that their ancestors had eaten for centuries. And
3 minutes, please.
okay, so the seaweed was the most important thing in Ireland famine. And in Spanish flu, we see whiskey, and many people consumed it directly. even who would never order even a glass of whiskey in life. And also some people dropped whiskey into their noses instead of drinking it to treat Spanish flu. And World War II, in concentration camps, the daily calories provided averaged at 1,300, and the food contained minimal protein, almost no vitamin or fats, and caused diarrhea. A cup of coffee is served for lunch, but mostly cabbage and water, and 20-gram margarine with bread for dinner. It was given in concentration camps. And I think these were the most important and interesting outcomes of my book, and I have tried to discuss the events in which populations have been most massively affected throughout the history of the world in the book. And my only purpose in writing this book was to raise a little bit awareness. It was to show a little bit of what the people who were sad, hurt, tired, and their life turned upside down went through, that was on their plates, in the food stores, in the fields, on the tables, on the holidays, in the tribulation times, beyond the history that we learned from our schools. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much for quite literally giving us a taster on gastronomy and food tourism, and pardon the pun. That was fantastic. Thank you. Do we have any short questions or quick questions for clarification? I'll also check the chat. We have a question from Jacqueline. I'm a PhD candidate from South Africa. My research focuses on dark tourism, specifically the legacy of apartheid in South Africa. Learning a lot from this, so thank you. And Hillary's replying to Jacqueline. The gastronomy is interesting. I just wrote a book chapter on the smells of dark tourism, so maybe that's something to pick up on the positioning, not just the positioning of the body, but also the sort of senses and dark tourism. Okay, well, thank you for that. Zhenni, last but by no means least, we welcome you to present your very new material as a PhD student here at Surrey, working on the Titanic in Belfast. They sort of had sort of a little bit of a foregrounding of that. Zhenni, you okay for sharing?
Yeah, I'll try.
All right. So you have 15 minutes.
I think you should be able to see it, right?
Yeah, all good.
A bad news, Jonathan. I practiced, but I spent 18 minutes. I hope I can be quicker.
I'm not sure. Home ground if we allow 3 minutes, but we'll see.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm very happy to be the last one to present something I like about dark tourism. And I think some examples in my presentation have been already mentioned in other professors' slides, so it can somehow save my time. Yeah, so a brief introduction about myself. I'm currently in the writing up stage in my final year PhD project, and I'm also an associate teaching lecturer in our school in University of Surrey, SHTM. As you can see, my name is Zhenni, so it sounds really like the English name Zhenni, so it's easy to remember. And the title for today's presentation, as you can see, there are 3 keywords. The first one is film viewing experience, and the second one is dark tourism experience, and the last one is the case of Titanic Belfast. So let's move on to our topic. Before talking about my research, I'll share a little story with you. As you can see from the map, the case study I'm gonna discuss today is in Belfast, the Belfast Titanic Museum. However, a few years ago, when I was doing my master dissertation, I was also researching on something about Titanic and dark tourism. And at that time, I was using the Southampton Titanic exhibition as my case study. And at that time, I was researching on the relationship between the motivations, on-site tourism experience, and the benefits people gained after visiting. So because the film Titanic is very famous, so I included it as one option in the motivation in my questionnaire. And after doing that research, I found that many people have seen the film. However, it is not their main motivation of visiting. So from that point, I started to curious about two questions. The first one is why I naturally link the film Titanic with the Titanic Museum. So what's the link, the actual link between them? And the second question is, if you have read some film-induced tourism literature, maybe you have noticed actually many film tourism research, their focus is on the film lovers or say the film fans who love the film so much, so they go for a visit. However, from my data collection process, I found that not that many film fans, actually more people are just normal audiences. So I was thinking what's gonna happen if I switch the focus from the film fans to just normal audience of the film. So having these two questions, I applied for a PhD project and research on this topic. So let's move to my research question. So there were three examples. Through these examples, you may think about what's the potential link between the film and the dark tourism attraction. This one, I think, has been already mentioned, the concentration camp and the film Schindler's List, right? And this is the second example. Also has been mentioned, Chernobyl exclusion zone and the mini drama series Chernobyl. So what's the potential link between them? And the last one is our main character today, the Titanic Belfast Museum and the film Titanic. I remember that last year when I did a dark tourism presentation for undergraduate students, one student answered, he thinks the link between these two is death. I said it can be, is also a true answer. However, from my perspective, I think the link between dark tourism and the film is they are all related to the same historical events. As a matter of fact, many dark tourism attractions are related to historical events, mostly are wars, disasters, this kind of dark historical event, right? And at the same time, we have so many films are produced, are created based on the same events. So in this way, these dark tourism attractions are somehow linked to the films. So this is the first example. They are linked through the World War II. And the second example, they were linked through the Chernobyl nuclear reactor disaster. And the last example, they were linked because they are all related to Titanic tragedy, right? So this solved my first question, what's the link between them? And move to the second question, what's gonna happen if we shift the focus to normal audiences who have seen the film, then go for a visit? So as you can see, the dark tourism attraction, the Titanic Belfast Museum, and it is related to a dark historical event, which is the Titanic tragedy. And at the same time, we have a film production, Titanic, based on the same event, right? So for normal visitors, they will only have dark tourism experience if they haven't seen the film. Agree, right? However, for people who have seen the film, they will have another film viewing experience before visit. So they have first decoding process as an audience. They decode the meaning, the emotion, the information from the film, a kind of representation of this Titanic tragedy. And after that, if they go for dark tourism attraction for visit, they have the second decoding process as a visitor. So during the visit, they see lots of museum displays and they decode the information, decode the emotion for the second time, right? So I assume the first decoding process as an audience would affect the second decoding process as a visitor. So what's the impact of previous film viewing experience on dark tourism visiting experience? This is my research question. Moving on to the research framework. I hope you can see it clear. So basically, it tells the same story as the last slide, but using variables and model. So firstly, before visits, if we have seen the film, we are audiences. We have audience involvement. This variable is to measure the involvement level when we were seeing the film. And moving on, during the on-site stage, obviously, we will have a museum engagement. I call it engagement within the museum. So everybody has this part. However, for people who have seen the film, they have an additional part of engagement, which has happened because of they evoked the memory of the previous film viewing. So I call it film engagement through memory recollection. And I assume these two different kinds of engagement will together contribute to the perceived value of their dark tourism visit experience. And this will further lead to satisfaction and behavior intention. So what's the contribution here? Firstly, it kind of bridged the two subfields of tourism in this one research, so dark tourism and also film tourism, because it's related to dark tourism, the historical event, and also the film. So we can also regard it as a film tourism site. And also, if you see this model, if we exclude this film engagement variable, it's actually a very common tourist experience model. However, I extend this tourist experience model by introducing this new variable. So film engagement through memory recollection. And also I applied concept of memory to this research setting, doctors with a film viewing experience. I'm gonna explain it very soon. So what's the link between dark tourism experience and memory? The key point here is memory recollection process can affect visitor engagement. So here is a picture of human brain. As we can see, this part is pink, right? So I also highlight the name using pink. It's hippocampus. So what's the relationship with hippocampus? Memory retrievals will engage the hippocampus. In other words, if in the museum we see something familiar, remind us of some people, some storyline, some information from the film. So our memories start to have the recollection process, and this will increase the engagement of hippocampus. And from the neuromarketing perspective, the brain and mind are one, which indicates the brain engagement, or we can regard it as individual engagement, because normally people only have one brain, right? And we always listen to what our brain asks us to do. So in this way, we linked memory recollection with brain engagement, and apply to my research scenario is visitor engagement, right? So have an example here. This is a display from Titanic Museum, a life jacket from the Titanic ship. And it may remind you of this scene from the film because Rose was wearing the same life jacket. It may help you to remember some information or some emotion from your previous film viewing experience and somehow affect your current dark tourism experience. So here I would like to share the key findings from my quantitative research part, because now I'm still doing the writing, I'm finalizing the qualitative part. And okay, as you can see, this is the research model, and every path is significantly supported, linked to each other. And which means the classic model part, audience involvement lead to engagement within the museum, and lead to perceived value of the museum experience, lead to satisfaction and behavior intention. And especially this part, film engagement through memory recollection can do the same thing. It also can mediate the relationship from audience involvement and on perceived value of museum visit and lead to further reactions. And also there is one interesting finding. I compare the two groups, recent viewers group and distant viewers group. Recent viewers group means you have seen the film in very recent time. And distant viewers maybe, for example, last time you have seen the film, it may be 10 years ago, something like that. And compare these two groups and find that they're very different in these two paths, from in museum engagement to experience value, and from film engagement to experience value. What's the difference? I found that distant viewers from these two engagements transfer to the perceived value of museum experience. They are more efficiently. In other words, how to explain this? For example, I have a participant. She's maybe she has seen the film for more than 10 times, I remember. And even in the last year, when I was communicating with her, she had seen the film for 3 times in the last year already. So which means she's a very recent viewer, right? And so during the museum visitation, she mentioned everything can remind her of something from her previous film viewing experience, which is not good, right? Because this will switch her focus from the physical museum visit to previous memory recollection part, and it will somehow overshadow the current visiting experience. However, for distant viewers, they may hardly remember the details from the film. However, it can still engage them during the visiting process in terms of film engagement and also museum engagement. And both engagements will contribute to their experience value, the value they gained from museum visit. And I think I still have some minutes. And at the end, I would like to share 2 sentences with you. And this is from a Titanic documentary. Jonathan recommended this to me, and I have watched this for several times already. And the film director James, not our James Cameron, is also in that documentary. And he mentioned when he went down to the Titanic, there is nothing there. And I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe that human memory can overlay on reality. And I started to cry. In that moment, he made a promise that in every dive I make to Titanic, I take a moment to remember where I am and what happened here and to be connected to it. I think these 2 sentences kind of explain why I think dark tourism is unique and meaningful. I always think that tourism is cold and warm at the same time. You can experience a lot of complex emotions. You can learn something new, and you can think of or consider some complex questions you may not consider if you are not there. So I hope this presentation is interesting. And this is the end. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
That's great. Thank you very much, Zhenni. I like the way that you shifted, even though you're engaging with dark tourism, you're also linking it to historical events very, very strongly. And I've got sort of questions as well. In the chat, Bethan said it's a really fascinating paper, Zhenni. And are there any questions or quick sort of comments or reactions for Zhenni before sort of opening it up more generally? There's a question from well, there's a reaction from Ray. I agree about the complexity of dark tourism. Thanks again, Zhenni. And from Hillary, you didn't explicitly mention this, but are you linking anchoring and neuro-linguistic memory attachments? I think you had a comment about the neuromarketing just before towards the end. Zhenni, if you'd like to respond.
Okay, I think this question, if my understanding is correct, is about how I use the film engagement through memory recollection to measure, right? So basically, I think I'm not using the concepts you just mentioned. I think I'm only using the memory part only about the recollection process. And the recollection process I measured from two perspectives. One is episodic perspective, another is semantic perspective. So basically, do you want to know more about how I did this, or is enough for your question?
Hillary's got a response. You might want to consider NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and the idea of anchoring as a quick response. Are there any? Sorry, go on, Zhenni.
Can I say something? Okay, I think this is a suggestion, right? Okay, yeah. So basically, since I'm at the end of my writing up status, maybe I cannot take your suggestion in this research. However, very thank you for your suggestion. I will consider this in my future research in this topic. Okay, thank you so much.
Hypnotherapy as well. Are there any other quick comments, reactions to Zhenni's paper that don't overturn the thesis, but reactions to that or clarification points?
Thank you.
Okay, well thank.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well let's open it up now. Again, if you want to, feel free to use the chat or sort of raise a hand, and we can sort of unmute people. We've had 4 fascinating and very well considered, carefully considered presentations that have taken us from the marshalling of the events industry right through into the marketing and the commercialization and into the sort of the recollection on the events. And there have been some strands that sort of run through the presentations in terms of I think ethics is something that's sort of been in the background about the appropriacy. There have been issues of authenticity, and I'd like to ask the panelists about that at some stage, and also we've gone in from the sort of present day into the past, into historical recollection and memory, from contemporary examples in the Ukraine to recollecting events through to sort of these events that are beyond historical sort of memory at them that we've had. So I'd like to thank all 4. And are there other questions then that we have? There's some very eminent people in the audience, postgrads and lecturers and authors. And some people I think have been sort of named in some of the presentations as well. So this is an opportunity to react. Otherwise, I'm just going to take over and just keep asking lots of questions. I'm not getting any raises yet. So my first question then it is about this authenticity, and it came up with Brent. But I'd also like to bring in Zhenni here, because Zhenni was also engaging with this idea of the dark tourism experience and the historical event, and that I wanted to ask about this issue of authenticity and links. Dark tourism and experience of the museum, the Belfast Museum, and I know that there's some people from Belfast. Big shout out to them in the audience. It's not necessarily a thank you, Jabrish. It's not necessarily a first order dark tourism destination, in the sense that Philip Gorevich has been writing about the Holocaust Museum in Washington as being different to Auschwitz, where the atrocities and the deaths took place. It's a place of association. It's linked, but quite often linked through artifacts. And yet the Titanic is an experience potentially a museum. It's getting artifacts, or it's trying to get more artifacts in. But in the past, it's relied upon this film connection. So my question then is about authenticity in this location, where an audience person is experiencing a museum, but also in terms of Bermuda, experiencing a myth, if that's possible. So that's sort of mostly to Zhenni, but also sort of to Brent. I'm also thinking about that link, that connection between the visit and what constitutes an experience.
If you don't mind, I'll just actually talk about the Titanic.
Please do.
Because I've done the museum in Belfast, but I happen to do it on April 15th, where they dress up in period pieces and talk about the events. And certainly that's a different experience than the second time I went just as a regular visitor to the museum. Tied in with that, I was in Halifax last month, and I went to the cemetery where the greatest number of bodies were buried from the Titanic in Halifax. And the J period Dawson is the one that's still visited and lots of flowers left. My understanding, the person's name was not Jack Dawson, but because of the movie, people go to see that. And then the third connection in that is the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, which is also in Halifax. And until they opened up, until the movie Titanic came out, their exhibit on Titanic was not that popular. And now their concern is it's a much larger museum than just about Titanic, but the vast majority of the people that come now just want to spend most of their time in the Titanic exhibit. So I guess what I'm trying to allude to, the fact there's so many different ways that the same story is being presented, and understanding the authenticity of something that was in the actual wreckage versus the recreation of that artifact in some other form is kind of shaping the experience of the visitor. So I don't know if I really just said anything there, but I just rambled on a bit. But it's the challenge is some of these events are so world known, and there's so many opportunities to quote market from it. And again, going back to the ethics and morality of who should be telling these stories. And obviously the Titanic Belfast can tell the story of the creation of the ship. And maybe it's that the difficulty is a lot of these museums, et cetera, are trying to add more to the visitor experience when you're then arguably lessening the authenticity or the location focus of what you've created.
Thank you, Zhenni. Did you want to add about maybe the creation of the ship versus the sort of the location of the disaster?
Okay, I think I would like to share something similar, but from some stories from my data collection. I heard something about authenticity. I don't know if, Professor, you have been, apart from the Titanic Museum in Belfast, have you ever been to other Titanic museums in UK?
Yeah, the one in Cove. Well, not UK, sorry, Ireland.
Yeah, I think there is another one in Liverpool, and another one in Southampton. So basically, they're all somehow linked with the Titanic tragedy, however, in a different way. For example, as you mentioned, the Titanic Belfast is more about the creation of the ship. However, the Southampton is the first stop after departure. So, which means many of the people who were working on that ship, they're Southampton locals, and many of them were died in the disaster. So the Titanic Museum in Belfast is more about telling the story from people's perspective, the local people's perspective. So it's a totally different angle looking to the same story. And also there's another one in Liverpool. I always think about why there's one Titanic related museum in Liverpool. If you have seen the film, still remember, on the ship's body, it's written Liverpool as the on the ship because the brand Titanic was registered in Liverpool. So that is the link. So the museum in Liverpool is mainly about they don't have artifacts, right? Because it's not related to the film, the shipbuilding or the first stop after departure. It's only about the media reactions about this disaster. So they don't have some artifacts can give you a kind of authenticity. So compare these three different museums about dark tourism, I would say the first two can give you give visitors more authentic experience because they are linked, the locational linked with the disaster. And the story is highly connected to the tragedy itself. So I would say for disaster like Titanic, this kind of museums built on the related area is actually, I think, is very authentic because it's normal people cannot access the Titanic ship in other ways, I think. I hope I explained something.
No. Thank you at all. We've had two responses from the chat. One is from DesmondTours.com. The industrial feel of the location surrounding the Belfast Museum provides visitors with a more authentic experience. So about the context of the experience, and we run a tour business and have had many such comments about that. And then there's also a sort of wider comment from Bethan Jones, who apologizes about the links, the sort of the Wi-Fi connection, but sees links between popular culture and dark tourism, which Zhenni, Brent, and Demet have all alluded to. And she notes that she's interested in Demet referring to zombie events, and Brent's just talked about people dressing up in costume, a sort of dark cosplay. And she says that I've seen an immersive Chernobyl experience advertised in a city near me where the audience is in the control room on that night. Gosh, can we consider these dark tourism, or are they a dark tourism sort of adjacent? Where do they fit in our understanding of dark tourism? And that I think brings in the sensorial side of things that we had in the second and third presentations on the sort of the taste and the smell. That sort of perfume smell, but also those tastes and those foods that are linked to that. So that's sort of an open question for anyone to respond to, and then we've got a question from Belfast. Demet, maybe you want to.
Okay. Thank you so much for the first question or the last question, because I see there are two different questions asked. But you are asking about the experiences, the darkest and the lightest, right? Bert and Jones?
The question was about zombie events.
Okay. So,
and sorry, just whilst you're speaking, sorry to interrupt. There's also an additional question on could you define a little bit more dark gastronomy?
Okay, so for the first question, if he asks that the events, the festivals, or these events, which side we can put these events, I think these are at the lightest part of dark tourism, because in the lightest part of dark tourism we see the entertainment focused events and traveling, and also people are having fun. People do not get suffered too much in the lightest part of dark tourism. And also the people is asking, why is dark tourism so popular right now? Why do we choose to visit places of death and tragedy? Why do we want to involve to these activities or festivals? What is that attracts us to such sorrow? And the answer is when we go to these places, or when we involve to these or participate to these activities or festivals, we see not strangers, but often we see ourselves and perhaps what we might do in those circumstances. And we are trying to figure out the answer of this question. For example, visiting the Berlin Wall in Germany. Berlin is one of the most visited place in the world, and people are always going to Berlin Wall area to see, to feel, to maybe to connect. And I think we talked about the authenticity. Berlin Wall is authentic because of the not because of the location, because of the event, the idea, and the politics behind it. Because these are important, these are authentic, not the location. So it was not the whole answer of this question, but I just want to give a little bit more information about authenticity. And yes, these festivals, I think, at the lightest part of the dark tourism. And also the other question was about dark gastronomy.
Yes, defining it or specifying it a little bit more.
Yes, gastronomy is not only eating and drinking something, it's the science and art of eating and drinking, and it's analyzing the relationships between culture and the food. And it's the combination of everything, combination of the culture, habits, talents, the historical knowledge, the taste, the materials that we use, the techniques while we cook. And I put this name to my book, Dark Gastronomy, in Times of Tribulation, because people eat and drink something in these suffered times, in these periods. So I just wanted to figure out the background of these eating and drinking in these times. So tribulation times tested us many times in the history, and affected most of the world's populations. For example, World War II. But some events, for example, the Ireland famine, for example, they happened in certain regions. And I just wanted to show that gastronomy is the only subject that connect people even in the most difficult times, and that food can have spiritual benefits as well as physical benefits. And I found many interesting outcomes, that even in Ireland famine, which happened in one region, and also the World War II, there were many gastronomic evolutions happened in these terrible times. So I think dark gastronomy is something that gastronomy, all the gastronomic events, all the gastronomic solutions about food, about the culture, about eating and drinking culture in very terrible times.
Thank you very much, Demet. Breeze, I'm just going to hold you for just a second, if possible. I'm just conscious of Oksana. You gave a very contemporary set of ongoing issues and case studies. So I think it's a different positioning with respect to authenticity. But sort of linking with Demet, can I ask about food and gastronomy? Have the events you said are adapting, perhaps extending, are gaining in a particular significance? What is the appetite for events in terms of these transitions? And do you have the culinary side of things in the other case studies that you mentioned that you had?
Sorry, Jonathan. Can you please repeat the last part of your questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm probably rambling. You mentioned frontline events, and that this has been a case study in resilience and bravery. It's very contemporary.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Demet is talking about times of difficulty, such as World War One. Here we have a contemporary case study of the events industry in transition and being marshaled towards a particular cause. Wondering about in terms of food, culinary festivals, has that been excluded? Has it changed things? You mentioned rehabilitation, the concert side of things, the bringing together of people. Is it a different way of bringing people together that was happening?
Yeah, the most of events now, it's held in Ukraine, what's happened in Ukraine after war started, after war began. A lot of like about Ukrainian identity. It's also like 2 weeks ago, it was a huge festival in Kyiv, which like more than 5,000 people attended these festivals. But it's all about Ukrainian cultural people, so interested about like more about Ukrainian traditions, Ukrainian singers, uh, Ukrainian literature. It was a huge festival, also like a book market. All Ukrainian, Ukrainian authors, Ukrainian books. Yeah, probably this time in this tough time, Ukrainians people just um, so proud of our some historical view, and they visited some definitely something like Ukrainian ethnical festival, ethnical music. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I've been told to apologize to Breach by my head of department, quite rightly. And Breach,
No, it's
do you
some
want?
problem with my Teams. Yeah, it's just I don't know, some connection and some sounds on a
That's okay.
background, and
Let
I
me
can hear
unmute.
properly.
I can't. Can I find you? Yeah, I'll unmute you. Oh, okay. Can I unmute you? I'm not sure if I can unmute you. Hold on a second. Sorry, I can unpin. I can spotlight for everyone. I can remove you from the meeting, but when let me. I'm not able to make you unmuted, I'm afraid. Can you type your question? What James is helping me, I think. I'm not able to unmute you. I'm really sorry. I thought I could unmute attendees. You can try and unmute yourself if that helps. Okay, if you click on the mic button.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You don't need
Great.
me.
First of all, to Demet, people in Ireland are still eating seaweed. We eat it all the time. So, and Oksana, I was very interested in what you were saying about, to me, the events during times of extreme trouble bring a great community spirit.
Thank you.
On a wider and micro community level. I grew up in the Troubles and I saw a lot of that happening then. So I really picked up on what you were commenting on about that. But the other thing that I wanted to ask in relation to that was, does dark tourists keep history alive? And who picks and chooses which aspect of history dark tourism is going to service?
Thank you. That's an open question to everyone and anyone. I'd also like to invite Dr. Raymond Powell, who I think is in the audience, if he wants to comment as a recent doctoral lecturer. Yes, Ray, if you wanted to sort of contribute, you're an authority on this topic as well.
Hello. Incredibly
Ray.
interesting conference. There's so much. I was just reflecting on the fact that dark tourism has a broad reach, doesn't it, in terms of the way we interpret things, so much so that it can be difficult to sift out what is dark and what isn't dark. And the whole issue of authenticity is an interesting one, which can tie us up in knots if we're not careful, was really what I was thinking. But in terms of excuse me, in terms of where we are with dark tourism research, I think we've got a real possibility to look at those dark elements in a way which, with new insight, I mean, for example, dark gastronomy, I thought was an interesting twist on where we go. I'll be honest and say I didn't fully understand what was so dark about the gastronomy, but the point is that we're able to look at a whole host of things with that dark perspective, which I think does help us to move dark research forward, because it quite clearly has an appeal. It quite clearly has a massive reach, which is what I was thinking there. But thank you for the conference. I mean, let's keep it going.
Okay, thank you, Ray. I suppose sort of reacting to degree, dark tourism is keeping history alive. Spinning it on its head, dark tourism, does it close off history? Does it sort of mean the end of a sort of history? Is something happening? Is it defining a sort of a closure of live events if you're having this form of tourism as a sort of re-engagement, or as Kirsten Greenblatt talks about, the sort of reanimation. She writes on heritage, and when a tourist is sort of seeing these places, they're being brought to life, but it's a second virtual experience of sort of something in the past. So is dark tourism then altering the history, or stopping the history, or is it creating something new in terms of it's a commercial appropriation? And as we saw, there are lighter and darker versions that Demet was well, and a number of the people were giving.
If I can talk about some of the research I've done in Estonia on this, after the end of the Soviet period, the Museum of the Atrocities of the Nazis and the Soviets, that museum was opened. There wasn't a huge amount of controversy about it because it was bringing these messages and stories to the world. Since then, you started seeing what I'd call kitschy dark tourism, where team events were created, where you're arrested by the Police, you do vodka shots and you sing Russian Soviet songs. So the whole point of some of these things is who's telling the message, what's the point of the message, and as I said, from a marketer perspective, I'm saying what is the intent? Is it purely commerce, or is it trying to preserve some kind of history? The other one in Tallinn as well, they've brought old Soviet statues and they've placed them behind one of the main museums, and when you do that, you've now created a story of what these statues represented. I'm a big believer you got to keep statues for whatever reason, but you can put them in the context. But now you create it where there's a statue with the Soviet soldiers' heads missing. do you need to display that? Obviously, it's up to I'm a big believer, it's up to the local culture, if you will, or people to decide that. But I think it definitely, like anything else that's preserved or any kind of museum, it's created by the creators. And yes, you're protecting some history, as I said, if you're protecting the artifacts, but it's then being shaped by how you're presenting them and what is the intent for the visitors to experience. And the other thing I'd say, and one of the challenges dark tourism is, the vast majority, it's not the priority or primary reason, as you alluded to, of why people are going somewhere. If they're going somewhere, they may visit some dark sites, but unless it's for lack of better words, a pilgrimage to visit concentration camps, it's just one thing you're doing on your 1 or 2 week holiday, and those, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, a lot of those sites are based on the fact you're not coming back. So then they're less concerned about preserving, quote, history from those.
Thank you. I'm from a native of Bristol, and I'm reminded of what happened recently when they pulled down the statue for the slave trader Edward Coulson, and they threw the statue into the docks, and then a couple of days later it was brought out and it was put in the Bristol Museum. But on its way, there was a crowd formed, and they trod on the neck of Edward Coulson, re-invoking the sort of the murder of George Floyd. So there was a sort of decolonizing, emancipating, but also sort of civil rights perspective being given to it, and the statue was painted over, and then it's been put in the museum as a recontextualized artifact, as a talking point, which is really interesting to see what it's done. We've got a comment from Ray again. Even visiting concentration camps, I had to negotiate with my wife that we'd also visit a Christmas market whilst we were in Krakow. Yes, the different intents and different sort of people, seeking the different experiences. Can I ask Oksana, where in the context of dark tourism, we're sort of shifting a little bit from the events industry. Where do you think, is there a potential for dark tourism? Is it something that we're too close to? Is it inappropriate? Are there certain locations where a subway or a particular shelter, you mentioned the witch of Konotop, but maybe there are certain villages where atrocities have been taking place that should not be destination points for people with different motivations?
So of course it's it could be some way for dark tourism in Ukraine, like you mentioned about Chernobyl disaster. I think everyone knows that this disaster happened 26th of April 1986, which is like 100 kilometers from Kyiv. It's not far. And of course, it was a huge impact for Ukrainians during this 37 years. And Chernobyl today, one of the famous places for dark tourism in Ukraine, not even when it's war, and not many people would like to visit Ukraine now from foreign countries, but before it was definitely one of the, like, for extreme tourism, for dark tourism place in the world. If you're talking about some places like linking with war, like for example, the occupation territory like Irpin region, it's a Kyiv region, but some town, Irpin, Bucha, they also, one company, after the occupation, after some weeks, would like to provide some like dark tourism tour to this the occupied territory, but they start and actually sell tickets for visiting this place. But these things, and this was still, and people just refused. It was a lot of complaining about this dark tourism tour, because things so fresh, and they decided maybe sometimes later, but now it's like from ethnic some point, and yeah, they just refuse. This was a lot of apologize, because for now, when it's war not finished, it's really like a lot of, like, yes, could be, because people can see what's happened now, but of course a lot of no, not, because yeah, it's the thing still so fresh, and probably a lot of people just not ready, just like it shows, it's like for entertainment, and it's need to be really, really careful, because for some people it's really like a tragedy. It's not be like a tourism entertainment things. Yeah, just something, but maybe in the future, of course, in the future, it's a good point, and people can see how it's happened, how is everything was. Yeah, but not now. Maybe later.
Thank you, James. I think you're there, sort of in the support, but you're also engaged heavily with dark events. Would you like to come in and have your tuppence?
Yeah, really happy to, and thank you to everybody who's
Sorry, can you come up and speak up a little bit?
Oh, so yeah, really happy to talk. Thank you to everyone who's presented. It's been fascinating to hear such diverse perspectives on this topic. And I suppose there are two things I wanted to briefly bring up. Is first about this point about authenticity. I think I'm really interested in how we've moved from a very public sector state curation of our history to something where the private sector has a much bigger role. And that's, not just the private sector, but also, NGOs, third sector organizations. That kind of monopoly on our history has been broken to a large extent through things like dark tourism and visitor attractions, and a sense that history can be a popular culture product, it could be a leisure product. It opens up different spaces for interpretation. And I think that move from what our colleague at Surrey, Scott Cohen, wrote a paper 2013, I think, on hot and cold authentication, and this idea that what is authentic and how things are authenticated is perhaps a really interesting discussion that we should be having more often in dark tourism, rather than asking whether something is authentic or not. Asking instead, how is it authenticated and who is it for and who controls that? That's the first thing I wanted to say. And the second was just a bit of a call, really, for people to keep looking at events in this context, because one of the things that we've found interesting in the research that we've been doing for a few years on dark events is that many events with links to death, tragedy, history, they're not primarily for tourists, and we can't always explain them or understand them by coming at them from the perspective of dark tourism. If you think about things like funerals, commemorations, some religious ceremonies, for example, they can be very unwelcoming to tourists. Like Oksana is saying, not all of these things are for tourists, and we can limit our analysis sometimes by coming at everything from a dark tourism perspective. And I'll just sort of make that call to branch out what we're doing a little bit into things like memory studies, into looking at some of the stuff that people have been talking about. I really like the idea of kind of let's see what's going on in gastronomy. Let's see what we get from popular culture. Let's see what we get from film, because there are so many different ways we can approach this. And I think sometimes as tourism researchers, we can get a little bit narrow, and that's certainly something I've been really guilty of in my research and my teaching. And I'm just really struck by all the different perspectives here and the richness of ways we can approach this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Hilary is reacting to that and saying that she's also delved into the idea of authenticity and state versus private sector control of the messaging surrounding the event, profit orientation versus historical perspective. Just to also note that there is a paper that James and Method, I think, have got coming out in Annals on dark events at the moment, so watch this space. Just in the sort of final couple of minutes, in thanking each of the panelists, reactions, final words, maybe we can just go through in the order of the speaker, Oksana, Brent, Demet, Zhenni. Any sort of wrapping up final comments, reactions to today, reiterating your thesis?
First of all, of course, thank you for the invite. Thank you for the invitation. It was for me. I'm so proud that I have this opportunity to share some incredible examples from Ukraine, which I'm so proud of our event managers, our people, our soldiers. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully it's not the last meeting. First, it's just first. Thank you again. I really will be happy,
Thank you,
to share some more examples, more and more, in the future. Thank you.
Brent.
Again, I'd like to thank you, Jonathan, for having me as part of this this session. I guess my biggest question I keep coming up with, or not coming up with, but the debate is who owns this. And as a marketing professor, I've always viewed nobody owns anything. We look at the same topics in different ways, but I mean, I've been to conferences where no, historians have to do this, no tourism people have to do this, no anthropology or sociology, and again, I don't really understand that. I mean, I understand it from a pragmatic standpoint, but from a research standpoint, sites are sites, stories are stories. Interest is interesting, and we all can bring our own perspectives on it. But I think also in terms of collaborating, and even more so, though, make sure the sensitivities and ethics of doing some of this kind of research, because these are very sensitive topics to a lot of people, particularly, again, the more recent events. So as long as it's clear of what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think dark tourism will continue to be a fruitful area for study and teaching, for that matter.
Thank you, Brent. Demet.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this seminar. While I was listening to the other presenters, I just thought about what was the menu in Titanic, all the night or dinner menus. So the Titanic, yes, it's the dark tourism activity, but the menus, the dinner, the lunch, and the breakfast menus service in Titanic was about dark gastronomy. So this is the maybe main difference. And I also checked some research that it says the serial killer tourism. Have you ever heard it before? Serial killers in the context of dark tourism. Now, there are some research about that, and they say that tourists tend to prefer real serial killers to fictional ones. So tourists want to see the areas of the serial killers lived and the event happened. So this is a kind of dark tourism right now. It's very interesting. And I'm just now thinking, what are the eating and drinking habits of these serial killers now? Because I'm also connecting everything with dark gastronomy. Thank you so much for I hope
I don't know if I should apologize for sending that down that way this evening. And Zhenni, final words and thoughts as well.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank you for all the comments, questions, and suggestions from participants. They're all valuable to me, and I will also consider that in my future research. And also, thank you for other 3 presenters. They're very diverse topics, so I learned a lot from you. And also, thank you for Jonathan's effort and James' effort for organizing all of this. And thank you for inviting me because I'm at the final stage of thesis writing. Every day feels so painful. This presentation somehow remind me I like this topic from the very beginning, so encourage me to continue.
Your supervisors
so
aren't
much.
that bad to you, are they, Zhenni? No. Just finally on there's a lot of chat exploding on the serial killers and their last meals on YouTube to explore. James has mentioned that there's a dark leisure paper on leisure activities of serial killers, and I think there's one of my former colleagues in University of Roehampton wrote about. She was a criminologist who wrote about people visiting Fred West's house. And well, shifting between that and thanking everyone for their energies, for their time, and as a form of consumption, that there's a lot of research taking place, as we've seen, and there's some very interesting trajectories that are being opened up by colleagues here and in the chat. So this is a thank you from Surrey, the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, especially the Hospitality and Events Department. Stay close to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and especially LinkedIn for other news and announcements and vivas and new publications coming out. So thank you, and have a great evening. It's been an enjoyable, though in a poignant sense, last 2 hours. All right. Good night, all. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.